Welcome to Just Asia, AHRC TV's weekly human rights program. These are the headlines. Burma's fleeing Rohingya injured by landmines. Christian student beaten to death in Pakistan school for drinking from water cooler. Missing Taiwanese activist on trial in China for subversion. Indonesian rights group commemorate Munir assassination. India's apex court declares right to privacy a fundamental right. One urgent appeal from Nepal. Welcome to AHRC TV's Just Asia. I'm Annie Lin. This week, Just Asia begins with Burma, where the government has rebuffed the Rohingya militant ceasefire offer. The Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, known as Arsa, announced a truce on Sunday, urging the Burmese army to lay down weapons as well to enable access to humanitarian aid. But government spokesman Sorte said Burma would not negotiate with terrorists. Arsa attacked several police posts on August 25, killing 12 people. In turn, the government carried out a brutal counter-insurgency clampdown. The UN estimates some 300,000 Rohingya have fled the violence and arson in Rakhine. While the official narrative from Burma says the army is only attacking Rohingya militants and that Muslims are burning their own homes, foreign journalists who recently visited the area found Buddhist youths setting fire to a village. Several Rohingya have suffered horrific injuries and loss of limbs by landmines along the Burma-Bangladesh border in their attempt to flee the violence. It is unclear who has placed these mines and when. There have been protests across Asia against the persecution of the Rohingya, as well as the silence of Burma's de facto leader, Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi. There have even been calls for Suu Kyi to return her Nobel Prize. Just Asia speaks to Adem Carroll for his thoughts.
Despite considerable international criticism, Aung San Suu Kyi is maintaining her silence regarding the Rohingya violence. In your view, is this due to a personal or political choice, particularly given that even in her time of house arrest, she never mentioned the Rohingya?
Yes, it is troubling, and it's a question that a lot of people are asking, whether she herself is biased or prejudiced against the Rohingya Muslims, against all Muslims. And there are small bits of evidence, things she's said at various interviews, but it's not really proof. However, she is very much a politician, and her base of support has been infected with this anti-Muslim perspective, and she has not done anything to fight that. That has come from the monks, from the Mabasa movement, and also from the military, which has been working for decades now to poison public opinion against the Rohingya specifically, and now again increasingly against all Muslims. So I think it's a political calculation primarily.
The Burmese government has rebuffed the rebels' offer of a ceasefire. What are the likely consequences of this?
Yes, and it's important to remember the Arsa insurgent group has made the offer. Meanwhile, the Burmese military is laying mines at the border of Bangladesh, and we have the foreign minister of Bangladesh finally calling the situation a genocide. So there is definitely an escalation here with the Burmese military literally digging in. I think that, rather than look at Aung San Suu Kyi as the problem, it's the military there and its interests that have been controlling the whole politics. And now they have popular support, unfortunately. So with that popular support, the Burmese government probably feels no political pressure, at least internally, to make any gesture towards peace. The international community, on the other hand, is upset, and I know that today the UN Secretary General made a statement, but all Security Council met again, and again they didn't really come out with much, certainly nothing in the way of action. I was over at the UN today and met with somebody who had been part of that process, and she said that the UN Security Council was afraid of creating more backlash among the nationalists in Burma. So this is unfortunate, but meanwhile there's no humanitarian access, and there's so many other issues that, obviously there should be a ceasefire to allow zones of humanitarian access, which is, I think, Bangladesh's suggestion. Without those zones, hundreds of thousands are going to continue to be desperate and perhaps die of hunger.
How will the huge refugee exodus affect the region as a whole?
Well, there has been an exodus for decades now, as you know, but this will certainly affect Bangladesh. because already there was 500,000 refugees, and this was an underclass. They were not allowed access to schools or food, or international charities couldn't help the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. They couldn't even register 90% of these refugees. The whole idea was to force this population back to Burma, but now that's clearly impossible, and so that will shift. And so with the involvement of Turkey in this crisis, saying that they'll help fund some of the aid, some shift is expected. We don't know what access will, how much access the charities will have, but a lot of Muslims around the world are eager to donate. For the short term, humanitarian aid is very important, but again, without a political solution, without a return to the Kofi Annan Rakhine Commission roadmap, I don't know where this is going.
I urge all countries to do what they can for humanitarian assistance to be provided. I have condemned the attacks made by the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, but in Rakhine State, there have been disturbing reports of attacks by security forces against civilians, which are completely unacceptable. I call on the Myanmar authorities to suspend military action, end the violence, uphold the rule of law, and recognize the right of return of all those who had to leave the country. I repeat my call for an effective action plan to address the root causes of the crisis. The Muslims of Rakhine State must be granted nationality, or, at least for now, a legal status that allows them to lead a normal life, including freedom of movement and access to labor markets, education, and health services.
In Pakistan, a 70-year-old Christian student was beaten to death by his fellow students for drinking water from the school's water cooler. His body lay on the floor for some time, but no teacher or headmaster came to inquire. Police are refusing to file charges against the school. Sharoon Masih was admitted to the MC Model School, Boraiwala, Punjab, for the 9th grade in mid-August. On his first day, August 27th, as he entered the classroom, the Muslim class teacher, Mr. Nasir Noble, introduced Sharoon as choha, a derogatory word used for sanitary workers or manual scavengers. After the class teacher's remarks, nobody allowed Sharoon to sit with them. He had to stand in a corner. According to Sharoon's mother, the boys of his class used to threaten him with dire consequences if he dared sit with them. His mother said, "Sharoon and I cried every night," as he described the daily torture he was subjected to. On August 30th, Masih took water from the school cooler during the break, which infuriated the Muslim students. They attacked him and beat him until he died. Sharoon's father took the body to the hospital, where doctors announced that he had died some 45 minutes before. Next, the Taiwanese activist who went missing on a visit to China is now on trial in Yunnan province for subverting state power. According to Chinese authorities, 42-year-old Li Mingche promoted multi-party rule in group messaging chats. Li went missing in China in March and was later revealed to have been detained. An NGO worker, Li is a well-known democracy and human rights activist in Taiwan. On March 19th, he traveled to Macau and from there to Guangdong, where he went missing. On March 29th, China confirmed Li had been detained for pursuing activities harmful to national security. Li's family and colleagues have said he regularly exchanged messages with friends in mainland China discussing democracy and China-Taiwan relations, but that he had done nothing wrong and only shared his experiences as an activist. Li's trial occurs together with that of other Chinese lawyers and activists similarly accused, such as activist Wu Gan and lawyer Jiang Tianyong. Wu Gan, 44, has given himself the title Super Vulgar Butcher. He has traveled throughout China highlighting cases of injustice against people whose houses have been forcibly demolished or who have had their farmland stolen. His trial has opened in Tianjin. 46-year-old Jiang Tianyong was arrested in 2016 while visiting the family of a detained lawyer. He was broadcast on state TV confessing to his crime. His trial is ongoing in Changsha, branded a show trial by his wife. For the past 2 years, China has been cracking down on lawyers and activists defending human rights and democracy. Moving to Indonesia, various human rights groups met on September 7th to commemorate the assassination of Munir Said Talib, a human rights activist poisoned to death by Indonesia's intelligence agency on September 7, 2004. Munir's wife, Mrs. Susiwati, also attended the commemoration. 13 years after Munir's death, the groups called for the government to publish the 2005 fact-finding report into Munir's assassination. As a human rights defender, Munir played a significant role in uncovering evidence of security forces' responsibility for human rights violations in Aceh, Papua, and Timor-Leste. He has received numerous threats as a result of his human rights work. In August 2003, a bomb exploded outside his home in Jakarta. Munir was found dead on a Garuda Airlines flight from Jakarta to Amsterdam on 7 September 2004. An autopsy carried out by the Dutch authorities showed that he died as a result of arsenic poisoning. In December 2004, the Indonesian authorities formed an official fact-finding team to investigate the murder. Although 3 Garuda Airlines staff were convicted of the killing, there are credible allegations that those responsible at the highest levels of government have not yet been brought to justice. In September 2016, President Widodo made a public pledge to resolve the case of Munir. In October 2016, the Public Information Commission ruled that the 2005 report should be made public. However, in February 2017, the Administrative Court repealed the Commission's decision on the grounds that the report had not been handed over by the previous government, and thus President Widodo's administration could not be made public. This decision was upheld by the Supreme Court in August 2017. Just Asia speaks to activist Gofur for details.
Peringatan Hari Munir yang ke-13 tahun, itu yang kita 13 tahun ini kita akan Bapak Jokowi tolong diperhatikan sebagai rakyat kecil. Tolong Bapak Presiden, jangan ya namanya Presiden kalau ini malu saya sebagai rakyat tidak bisa menuntaskan pelanggaran HAM masa lalu 91, 98, penculikan, dan kasus Semanggi, Sri Sakti, Semanggi 2, dan lain-lain kasus. Bapak Jokowi mau nuntasin kasus 7 tuntutan. Ternyata sampai sekarang sudah 3 tahun menjalankan, belum ada kabar-kabar berita sedikit pun. Tinggal berapa bulan lagi pesta demokrasi. Itu aja sebagai rakyat Indonesia. Saya tolong ke TPF harus dikembalikan lagi sidang atau pengadilan ad hoc juga. Itu mudah-mudahan dibilang kita yakin tinggal tergantung keberanian Bapak Presiden. Saya sih optimis ya masih bisa dikejar dalam pesta demokrasi, tinggal 19 bulan lagi ya masih bisa dikejar untuk menuntaskan pelanggaran HAM. Ya sudah sampai di sini makannya nggak bisa mindo untuk pesta demokrasi 2019.
Moving to India, a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court has passed a landmark judgment holding that the right to privacy is a fundamental right. A far-reaching and most welcome decision, the Supreme Court has set the ground for the realization of human rights in ways that have possibly not been envisaged earlier. While the right to privacy will not be absolute, it becomes a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, the right to life and personal liberty, which can be curtailed by procedure established by law. The August 24th judgment has overturned previous Supreme Court judgments holding that the right to privacy is not a fundamental right. The judgment further declares that sexual orientation is an essential attribute of privacy, thereby paving the way for the Penal Code provision criminalizing homosexuality to be declared unconstitutional. It also paves the way for an end to India's moral policing of its citizens, whether regarding what they eat, wear, or other personal choices. The government's reactions to the judgment remains to be seen, particularly in light of the Aadhaar card, India's national identification scheme. Finally, the Urgent Appeals Weekly features one case from Nepal. When Ram Kishore Harijan and his son Parikshan Harijan, Dalits, went to the local cooperative to buy chemical fertilizer, they were overcharged. When they questioned the price difference, the non-Dalit owner and his son verbally and physically abused Ram Kishore and his son. That is all for this episode of Just Asia. For more on these and other issues, please visit www.humanrights.asia or www.alrc.asia/justasia. Thank you for watching and see you next week.